Good morning, dear souls. Today, I want to invite you into a sacred space, a space within yourself where silence becomes your most powerful language and withdrawal becomes your most graceful answer. We live in a world that constantly encourages noise. It rewards those who shout, those who hustle, those who speak the loudest. But I want to remind you, you are not your noise, you are not your defense, you are not your arguments. You are something deeper, more enduring, more radiant. There is immense strength in the quiet. When we choose silence over reaction, we choose self-respect over self-sabotage. When we remove ourselves not out of anger but out of peace, we are not running away, we are returning inward. Let's talk about removal. To remove yourself completely does not mean to abandon. It means to release your attachment to external validation. It means to walk away from spaces that no longer resonate with your energy. It is an act of deep self-love to say, I will not shrink myself to fit in places I've outgrown. When we speak from ego, we try to control. When we speak from silence, we radiate wisdom. Let your silence speak the words your soul has already whispered. Let your stillness become your strength. There will be moments where people won't understand your quiet. They will question your distance, but remember, you are not responsible for their interpretation. You are only responsible for your alignment. Silence is not weakness. It is wisdom clothed in patience. It teaches us that we do not have to justify our healing. We do not have to debate our boundaries. We do not have to perform our growth. In silence, you allow the universe to respond. In silence, you reconnect with your highest self. In silence, you heal cell by cell, thought by thought, belief by belief. So, dear soul, if something feels heavy, if your voice trembles with exhaustion rather than truth, then maybe, just maybe, it is time to remove yourself, not as an escape, but as an elevation. And in that space, let your silence tell your story. Let your peace be the answer. Let your energy walk in the room before you speak a single word. You are powerful. You are aligned, and your silence is sacred. Inner silence holds power. Silence is not absence. It is presence at a higher frequency. Let's begin by exploring something that most people overlook in this busy, noisy world. The power of inner silence. I want to be very clear, silence is not the absence of sound, nor is it the absence of presence. Inner silence is not emptiness. It is a presence so full, so potent, that it transcends the need for noise. When you touch that silence, you're not escaping life. You're stepping into it more deeply than ever before. Most of us are conditioned to equate communication with words, with responses, with clever comebacks and perfectly crafted explanations. But let me offer you a different perspective. There is a form of communication that predates language, a frequency that all living beings respond to without needing a single word: energy. Your silence, when aligned with inner calm and clarity, sends a signal far more powerful than any sentence you could ever speak. Inner silence is clarity without thought. It is the quiet space between your reactions and your wisdom. It's where your most authentic self lives. In that stillness, we don't have to try to prove ourselves or earn worthiness. We just are. That is the place of real strength because it is unshakable, and it cannot be manipulated or misinterpreted. So many of us spend our lives talking over our truth, explaining, defending, justifying. But I want to invite you to consider something radical. What if you didn't have to explain anything? What if the most powerful response was no response at all? When you stop over-talking and begin listening to your own inner wisdom, you'll notice that silence is not passive. It is active alignment. From a psychological lens, silence gives the mind space to process and rewire. It allows old programs to surface, programs we didn't even realize were running. And when those patterns appear in the quiet, we're given the power to rewrite them. You see, when we fill every space with noise, with reaction, we block ourselves from the very insight we're seeking. Silence is the gateway to awareness. Philosophically, inner silence is the purest form of freedom. Because when you are no longer compelled to fill space with words, you are no longer controlled by fear. You are not waiting for approval. You are not responding to judgment. You have stepped into sovereignty, and in that state, you radiate authority, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that liberates yourself. Letting your silence do the talking does not mean you never speak. It means that when you do, your words arise from a centered place. They are not impulsive, they are intentional. You begin to speak only when it adds to the energy of truth, not when it distracts from your peace. This silence I'm speaking of is not external. You can be in the middle of chaos, surrounded by voices, and still hold a sacred quiet within you. That's the goal, that's the practice, to live in a state where your peace is not dependent on your environment, but on your internal alignment. So when I say, remove yourself completely and let your silence do the talking, I am inviting you to return to your most powerful self, the one who does not need to react, the one who knows that true influence is felt, not forced. Remember this, the world hears your silence more clearly when it's grounded in inner peace. Let that be the language you master. Self-detachment builds awareness. Stepping back allows you to observe rather than react. Let's go deeper. Because inner silence isn't just about withholding words, it's also about observing yourself from a higher place. That's where detachment comes in. Now I want to be very precise with this idea. When I speak about detachment, I don't mean disconnection or apathy. I'm not suggesting that you stop caring or become emotionally numb. What I'm talking about is conscious detachment, a state in which you can witness your life without being swallowed by it. You are no longer drowning in your reactions. You are no longer fused with every emotion, every narrative, every egoic impulse. You are present, but you are not pulled under. This kind of detachment is not cold. It is compassionate. It's not running away from the self. It is stepping far enough back that you can actually see the self. And that's where real awareness begins. Let me explain this psychologically. The mind tends to operate from habit. It loops. It repeats old thought patterns, many of which were inherited from childhood or absorbed unconsciously from the environment. If you're too close, if you're always reacting, always emotionally entangled, you don't even realize the loop is running. You think you are the loop. You think that anxious voice in your head is your voice, but it's not. You are the awareness behind it. You are the stillness that can observe the storm without becoming it. And this is where detachment becomes a superpower. When you remove yourself from the center of every trigger, you create a sacred space between stimulus and response. In that space, you can choose. You are no longer a puppet of your past conditioning. You become the conscious author of your present moment. Now, from a spiritual perspective, detachment is what allows us to live without clinging. You stop attaching your peace to how people treat you or how the world shows up. You stop saying, if this goes right, I'll be okay, and instead you say, no matter what happens, I will return to myself. That is freedom. That is power. and it is born not from control, but from release. In relationships, this kind of detachment allows you to stop taking everything personally. You begin to realize that most people are not reacting to you. They are reacting to their own unhealed pain. And when you are not entangled in their wounds, you don't need to argue or defend. You can simply observe. You can hold space or you can walk away, but either way, you are no longer losing yourself in the process. This, to me, is one of the highest forms of maturity, the ability to witness your own experience without collapsing into it. And this is the root of true silence, because once you stop reacting, once you stop trying to fix or explain or persuade, you start to listen. You listen to life, you listen to your intuition, you listen to your body, and in that listening, wisdom rises. So yes, remove yourself, step back. Detach from the chaos long enough to recognize that it was never you. You were just close enough to believe it was. Let that distance become your clarity. Let that stillness become your teacher. And remember, you do not have to attend every battle you're invited to. Sometimes your growth is the quiet choice to simply observe and not engage. Words can be limitations. Constant talking can dilute your energy and power. Let's now turn our attention to something that most of us take for granted, our words. We're taught from an early age to value speech, to say what's on our minds, to speak up, speak out, speak often. And yes, communication is essential. It connects us, teaches us, allows us to share our inner world with others. But here's the part we often miss. Words are not always the solution. Sometimes they are the limitation. I want you to really let that in. Words are powerful, but they are also narrow. They are symbols, abstractions. They point toward meaning, but they are not the meaning itself. And when we rely too heavily on them, especially in moments of emotional turbulence or deep transformation, we often end up reducing an experience that is sacred and multidimensional into something small and rigid. We try to explain things that were never meant to be explained. We try to fix things with words that were meant to be healed through presence. There's a psychological cost to oververbalizing. When you constantly feel the need to explain yourself, what you're really doing is seeking approval or control. You're trying to manage how others perceive you, trying to shape their opinion, trying to soften the edge of their judgment. But in doing that, you dilute your energy, you stretch yourself thin, you abandon your own peace in exchange for an illusion of understanding. Sometimes the more we talk, the further we drift from truth. Let's take it a step deeper. When you speak too quickly or too often, you begin to identify with the role you're playing, the version of yourself that you are presenting to others through language. You create a kind of performance, and once that performance is in motion, it becomes very difficult to be still, to actually feel what's happening beneath the surface, to be with your emotions without narrating them, explaining them, or turning them into a story. Philosophically, this speaks to the illusion of self-identity. The ego loves to talk because talking reinforces its sense of control. It tells you, if I can explain it, I can own it. If I can name it, I can manage it. But you are not your ego's narrator. You are not the story. You are the awareness behind the story, and that awareness, your true self, speaks in silence. It speaks in feeling, it speaks in presence. So instead of always rushing to fill space with words, what if we began to honor the space itself? What if we allowed ourselves to feel the full texture of a moment without trying to capture it, define it, or tame it? There is profound intelligence in silence. A deeper kind of listening emerges when we quiet the voice that always wants to be heard. And from that silence, something extraordinary happens, clarity. Not the kind of clarity that comes from reasoning things out, but the kind that arises from simply being with what is. You see, when you stop trying to speak your truth, you begin to embody it. And that is the moment when your presence becomes far more powerful than your words ever could. You are not here to argue your worth. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to live in alignment, with grace, with authenticity, with inner power. So remember this: some truths are too sacred to be spoken. Let your silence protect them. Energy speaks louder than speech. Your vibration communicates more than your voice ever can. Let's look even deeper now beneath the words, beneath the silence. Let's talk about energy, because the truth is you are communicating all the time, even when you say nothing. Especially when you say nothing, every moment your energy speaks. It tells the truth of where you are in your alignment. It announces your boundaries without explanation. It reveals your inner world long before your mouth ever opens. We've all felt it. You walk into a room, and before anyone speaks, you can feel the atmosphere. You know who is tense, who is open, who is pretending to smile. There's a transmission happening, and it's not through language. It's through presence. That's the power of your energy. It speaks louder than speech because it cannot lie. It's always telling the truth of your vibration, of your consciousness, of your relationship to yourself in that moment. And that's why silence, when it comes from a grounded and aligned place, is so powerful, because it allows your true frequency to lead. It allows others to feel you, not just hear you. This is not a mystical idea. It's deeply human and incredibly practical. Psychologically, we are wired to pick up subtle cues, tone of voice, body language, emotional resonance. Most of what we register in communication happens non-verbally, so while your words may say, "I'm fine," your energy might be saying, "I'm exhausted, I'm disconnected, I'm not present." And that dissonance creates confusion, not just for others, but for you as well. When your energy and your silence align, when there is coherence between your internal state and your outward stillness, people feel it. It creates trust. It creates clarity. You don't have to convince anyone of your truth. You simply are the truth, and others recognize it, even if they don't have words for it. Now, think about how much energy we spend trying to control perception, trying to explain, correct, defend, persuade. All of that is effort, and often it's coming from a place of insecurity or fear. But when you learn to trust your energy, when you prioritize your inner coherence over external approval, you stop needing to manipulate how you're perceived. You simply let your presence do the talking. This is a shift from performance to embodiment. It's no longer about saying the right thing. It's about being in the right alignment. And from that place, everything you do carries a different frequency. Your silence becomes magnetic. Your stillness becomes a form of leadership. This is why some of the most powerful people in the world are not the loudest. They don't need to prove their worth. Their energy enters the room before they do. Their boundaries are felt without being enforced. Their presence holds the conversation even when they are not speaking. Philosophically, this invites us into a deeper trust, not just in ourselves, but in the intelligence of life itself. When we stop over-explaining and let our energy speak, we're also surrendering the need to control the outcome. We're allowing the moment to unfold naturally, knowing that what is meant to align with us will find us not because we chase it with words, but because we attract it through vibration. So the next time you feel the urge to speak just to fill the space, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what is my energy saying right now? And then listen. The answer will always be more honest than anything you could say out loud. Remember this, your presence is your message. Make sure it speaks what your soul truly wants to say. Healing begins in stillness. Silence is the gateway to personal healing and spiritual realignment. Let's pause together here and talk about something essential to every journey of growth, healing. And not the kind of healing that comes through doing more, fixing more, or talking more. I'm talking about the kind of healing that begins in stillness. Stillness is not just the absence of motion. It is the presence of something deeper, something intelligent, something restorative. Most of us have been taught to equate healing with effort, with activity, with solving problems, and yes, there are moments when action is necessary. But true, lasting healing often begins in the exact opposite way, in a quiet, sacred stillness that allows the body, the mind, and the spirit to recalibrate without interference. We are a society addicted to movement. We believe that progress always means forward motion, that resolution always comes from dialogue, and that silence is something to be avoided. But what if silence isn't empty? What if it's full of answers, full of medicine, full of truth waiting to surface? Psychologically, stillness is essential for integration. You can't process an experience fully when you're still inside of it, reacting to it, spinning in it. You need space, space to feel, space to reflect, space to allow your nervous system to settle so your insight can rise. Stillness is the environment in which your nervous system can switch from survival to restoration. And until that switch happens, real healing cannot occur. There's a reason why we often have our most profound realizations not in conversation, but in solitude, in those quiet moments when we've stopped striving and started listening. When the world gets quiet, your inner voice gets louder, but you must be willing to sit in that space long enough to hear it. That's the courage many people avoid because stillness can be uncomfortable at first. It brings up everything you've been running from. Stillness is honest. It shows you what's really going on underneath the surface. And that's exactly why it's so powerful. Because once you can see it, you can heal it. Philosophically, stillness is an expression of trust. When you stop reaching, stop pushing, and simply be, you're telling the universe, I no longer believe I have to force what is meant for me. You're letting go of the illusion that everything must be earned through suffering or explained through logic. You're stepping into a higher form of faith, one that knows healing doesn't need to be rushed, and growth doesn't need to be loud. Stillness is where the body remembers its own rhythm, where the heart whispers its own truth, where the soul reminds you who you were before the world told you who to be. That's why I encourage you, especially when life feels chaotic or unclear, to return to stillness, not to escape, but to re-enter your life more consciously. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to fix everything today. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is to sit with yourself, breathe and listen. And if emotions rise, let them. If silence feels strange, stay with it. There is something sacred happening beneath the surface. Something beautiful that doesn't need to be named in order to be real. So if you are tired, if you are overwhelmed, if you are unsure of what comes next, don't reach for more noise. Reach for stillness. Let it hold you. Let it heal you, and remember this. You do not heal by talking yourself into wholeness. You heal by sitting quietly long enough to remember you already are. Your worth is not measured by noise. You do not have to prove your value through explanation or defense. Now we arrive at something that may feel counterintuitive, but it's one of the most powerful truths you can live by. Sometimes your absence speaks more than your presence ever could. We live in a world that constantly tells you to show up, to participate, to be seen, to engage. And yes, being present, being visible, has its place. But there's another form of power, quieter, deeper, and often more transformative. The power of removal. The conscious decision to step back, to not respond, to not explain, to not participate in what no longer serves your soul. It's not withdrawal out of fear or avoidance. It's not cold detachment. It's an act of reclamation. When you remove yourself from noise that dishonors your peace, you are not losing ground. You are reclaiming it. You are saying to the world and to yourself, I no longer negotiate my presence in spaces where my spirit must shrink. That is strength. That is inner authority, and make no mistake, people notice when you remove your energy. They may not say it, but they feel it. Your absence becomes a mirror. It shows them the weight of your presence, not because you were loud or demanding, but because you were essential. And now you are no longer accessible. Psychologically, this is what we call boundary embodiment. It's not a boundary you announce, it's one you live. By choosing not to argue, not to chase, not to be reactive, you create energetic clarity. Others feel where they end and where you begin. They feel that your attention is earned, not owed. This doesn't come from ego. It comes from self-respect. It comes from knowing that your presence is valuable, and that offering it to people or situations that drain you is a silent act of self-abandonment. But when you choose absence wisely, you return to yourself, you recenter. You remember that you don't need to be everywhere to be powerful, and you don't need to explain your silence for it to be understood. Philosophically, it's a beautiful paradox. When you stop showing up in places that misuse your energy, your essence becomes more potent. Like a flame protected by glass, it burns more steadily. It becomes something people no longer take for granted. This is especially true in relationships. If someone only values you when you are constantly available, constantly proving, constantly giving, they may not value you at all, but rather what you provide. And sometimes the only way to teach others your worth is to stop showing up in the same old way, not out of punishment, but out of clarity. Out of love for yourself, you are not abandoning others by removing yourself from dysfunction. You are honoring your growth. And in doing so, you open the door to more aligned connections where your silence is respected, your boundaries are known, and your energy is reciprocated, not extracted. So give yourself permission to step away, to be quiet, to disappear for a while if you need to. You are not vanishing, you are evolving. You are creating space for deeper peace, deeper truth, and deeper presence. And when you return, it will not be with explanation. It will be with intention, and remember this. Your power was never in how loudly you showed up, but in how wisely you chose where not to.